Welcome to the show Talks with Dasha, where we take a deep dive into the world of tech news, startups, and innovation. As your host, I'll be your guide on this exciting journey. Together, we'll uncover the latest trends, explore groundbreaking ideas, and interview industry leaders. My name is Dasha. Let's get started. The topic of our discussion today is WeWork crash. What does the future hold for co-working space? And I'm thrilled to have Kaylee DeSico as our special guest. Hi, Kaylee.
Hello.
As our special guest today, Kaylee, the Director of Enterprise Sales at Expansive, the workspace community where people and businesses thrive. Welcome to the show, Kaylee.
Cheers. Thank you for the introduction.
Amazing. So let's get started. So,
Yes.
Kaylee, you have been working in the sphere of flex workspaces for more than 10 years. To be honest, it's hard to compete with your experience. So tell us a little bit about your company and what you do on a regular basis here.
Yes, thank you. Well, first off, I'm thrilled to be sitting next to you, Dasha,
Thank you.
not only as a friend of mine, but someone who I admire and respect, who brings these interesting and challenging conversations, to light. And so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, yes, I've been a part of the flexible workspace world for a decade now, something I'm so passionate about with where flexible work is going. I live and breathe it every day. We're, in one of our expansive locations as we speak. So with that said, I actually studied real estate in college and then transitioned as employee number one of Expansive Workspace, which is a nationwide co-working and flexible office brand. We've grown to 46 locations across 35 cities in the United States specifically. And where we differ is we buy our buildings. And so we'll get a little bit into later of how there's different business models that co-working operators take on.
So you're not renting them, right? So you're buying them.
Exactly. Yeah, we're sitting in a building that Expansive bought a few years ago. So we're the landlord of the buildings. It gives us control over the asset, the pricing, the build out. So again, very different than some of the other models you might be familiar with.
So can we consider this model unique, right? Because I'm not an expert, so typically that's not how things done, right? Exactly.
We're going to talk about the lease arbitrage model today, and that's a little bit where WeWork is facing some troubles. So that's a little bit about the business model. And I'm the Director of Enterprise Sales and Accounts, which ultimately means I work with companies that are 500 employees or more typically. Mm-hmm. They have a national or global presence. They have multiple locations and employees across the world. And they are looking for, how can I integrate flexible office space in my real estate portfolio, right? And we've seen a lot of use cases with that with corporations. For example, a lot of them are using our on-demand day offices, meeting space, event space, testing those types of options. On the other spectrum, you have a lot of groups in downsize mode. They do not want to sign 10 to 20-year leases anymore. So they're looking at Expansive and other operators saying, how can I get more cost efficient? How can I downsize my footprint? By still engaging my employees throughout the globe. And so we've been seeing a lot of corporations downsize. We've been seeing testing of certain markets. And we've been seeing groups using us as they onboard and attract and recruit new talent. So again, that's the group I focus on, but let's not forget that co-working was built on the foundation of supporting startups and freelancers. And that's a big part of our business model. And a lot of the people and companies you'll see today, it's a beautiful blend of both startup life and also the other spectrum, which is more corporate life. So it's a cool thing seeing those worlds collide within co-working settings nowadays.
Yeah, so very, very interesting. Yeah, and as Kelly mentioned, right now we are live streaming from the Expansive office in Miami. And I have to say that it's truly amazing. I love working from here. And if you have never tried it, you should give it a try. And
yes, visit us.
yeah. And Kaylee, so right now a lot of people are talking about the WeWork crash, and they're, like at least concerned. I wouldn't even say worried. Yeah, like what's going on with this industry. So how would you assess, the current situation in the light of WeWork decline? So what's going on with the industry?
Yes. Let's get to the meat of the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm not here to roast WeWork. Let's just start with that, right?
Yeah. Obviously.
So I respect the vision that they've laid out for co-working, and that they did bring it more mainstream, more awareness to it.
Sure.
And that is something I'm very grateful for. I'm really here to kind of lay out some facts of what's going on right now, and how that trouble has started and picked up a bit in the past couple months here.
Yeah.
So, my peers as well as we want the best for co-working and the flexible office industry as a whole. So we're all in this together, right? We want WeWork to come out of this. So the original founder, Adam Newman, and his senior leadership team at the time, they ultimately made some poor business decisions, right? That have had these effects that we're seeing unravel in real time.
So right away, I will just ask a quick question. So you think that is like the reason is a result of poor mismanagement rather than the industry collapse itself, right?
I take that stance.
Yeah.
That yes, it's
okay.
No operator is immune to what is going on.
For sure.
And I'll get to that all of us expect some closures in some way throughout co-working to ripple. But here are some of the factors of why, some of the decisions that WeWork made early on that's leading to the troubles they're having today. And I wrote a few down here. So the first would be expanding too rapidly, too much space in certain markets. So concentration in urban markets. We'll talk about New York in a few minutes here, and how they've concentrated primarily downtown CBDs, which we know are struggling in some areas.
Yeah.
They've signed very expensive leases. So again, long-term leases with high rents. And so that goes back to their model I mentioned to you, which is the lease arbitrage model. Essentially, WeWork signed a long-term lease with an office landlord, and then they're renting back short-term office space rentals. The business model it's obviously had good intentions, but they're getting into trouble now that, again, demand might be slower to fulfill these spaces that they had filled before. And so now they're having trouble paying back these lease obligations. We're, again, expansive. We buy our buildings. So we have a little bit more control over what's going on with the building. And then so basically they went all in on scale and volume, right? They wanted to attract investors. They wanted to attract the market.
Yeah.
So they went go bigger or go home.
Yeah.
And so these factors, along with some unnecessary acquisitions that Adam Newman made early on, meaning that he thought of themselves, of WeWork, more as a tech company, where they are a property business at the core. So he would make acquisitions in certain businesses. We live, we grow.
Yeah, we live. Yeah.
Two arms of the business that he also dabbled in at the time. So he would make some acquisitions relative to those businesses. And so again, it veered away from ultimately what they were, born upon, which is office space. And so, this has ultimately been a big punch in the gut for the brand lately, as you can imagine. If you rewind to 2019, you might remember that's when the first implosion around WeWork happened. They put in the paperwork for their IPO at that time.
Yeah. I remember that moment. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's when things first started getting a little dicey. When they filed for the IPO, it ultimately did not go through. And I think they went from 47 billion valuation to 10 billion down to 5 in a matter of 30 days. And so that lost a lot of consumer confidence. They went under a lot of financial scrutiny, being like, is this business really on the path to profitability? So SoftBank eventually took over as their primary investor. They ousted Adam Newman out of the business, so no longer CEO. He got a good compensation package, but he was no longer the leader of that business. They went through a lot of layoffs. They started to restructure, letting some leases go. Obviously, we're finding that the impact of the leases they did choose to let go, it hasn't been enough to turn the business around fully. So that's why we're in this place today. But they did go public. They are public now. Back in 2021, they brought on a new CEO who actually just abruptly left a few months ago. So they're going through that transition. And now their valuation, now their value has dropped. They're at risk of being delisted on the New York Stock Exchange, and they're pending Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So that's not what their investors want to hear, nor SoftBank, who's invested billions of dollars into this business.
That's so true. Yeah, definitely. So just like while we didn't go further, so summarizing the mistakes. So first, you said high concentration, right? And you wanted to mention something about New York City, right? Because like, as far as I know, they have more than 70 different locations only for one city. Obviously, New York is huge, right?
Yes.
But I mean, do we really need so many co-working spaces in one city?
I would beg to differ, no. We've also done that where we really concentrated on Chicago. That's where we started, where we have 6 locations. We don't have 70.
Well, that's a big difference,
Yeah, but you're right. They can cannibalize on each other a little bit. So ultimately, WeWork became New York City's biggest office tenant. They surpassed JP Morgan Chase. Which is wild in terms of how much office space. I think about 8 million square feet, like you said, 70 locations. So let's say they exit a number of these leases, right, over the next, year. It puts additional pressure on an already distressed office market. We know that, New York hasn't bounced back to the days it once was quite yet.
Yeah.
So if they exit a lot of their leases, that puts additional pressure on the distressed office market in New York, and puts more office buildings underwater on their loans. So that's the state of that these landlords are very nervous. Potentially their tenant is going through bankruptcy. WeWork is still paying rent at certain locations. So it's not like it's all locations are hurt, and they're going to obviously release not all their locations, New York. Some are thriving, right? It's just the unknown is scary for that office market and the landlords involved with WeWork. So, post bankruptcy, bankruptcy doesn't mean the business is over. You can come out stronger from that. You restructure your finances. You eliminate leases, right? You move on or renegotiate with landlords. But again, if they go through bankruptcy, SoftBank and other investors and past employees lose that vested interest. So they're trying to help WeWork avoid bankruptcy. But bankruptcy could be the best thing for the business ultimately. So it's just an interesting pivotal point, and it's a waiting game right now.
Yeah. So very interesting. But so analyzing all this situation, what lessons can we learn, to kind of all other co-working operators? I'm sure they have analyzed it. So for them, for you, like what should you avoid, or what should you, keep in mind in order to avoid being in this situation?
Yes, good question. So, again, as I said, not all co-working operators are immune to what's going on. First off, there's a lot of opportunities with potentially the buildings that WeWork is exiting. For example, there's certain operators that actually might take over old WeWork spaces.
Yeah, okay.
We did that actually.
Really?
Yeah, we've been through the pandemic starting to enter into some management agreements with the landlord is what they're called. So we actually took over already a former WeWork in Chicago a couple of years ago. They left that lease early. And we, talked to the landlord. We're an experienced operator.
Mm-hmm.
So we came in and said, hey, we can operate this business for you. You already have the space built out. So, we're going to rebrand it a bit, but let's enter in a relationship where it's more revenue sharing. It's a management partnership agreement versus a lease that we're entering into.
But so because you always buy. So
Yeah.
in this case, you didn't buy. So you chose like a little bit of different model, right? So it's just like an exception.
Exactly. This is a little bit of an exception to our business model, but there's more opportunities to get into some markets quicker as we're seeing more consolidation in the industry. So again, not all co-working operators are going to survive in certain markets. And so there's other operators that want to get into that market.
Yeah.
And they have this already pre-built space, so you don't have to put in as much capital. And you're an experienced operator. The landlord appreciates that. And they don't need to repurpose or build the space differently. So they say, all right, let's enter into a management agreement or a partnership agreement in this case. So you're going to see a lot of that happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see office landlords manage the space as their own flexible office space. Do I think they should partner with an experienced operator like Expansive or others? Yes, because it's a very operationally intense business. Not everyone can do co-working the right way. And a lot of companies have realized that. So, but you will see office landlords kind of transitioning their spaces to be more in tune to what workers want these days.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we've talked about, or we've seen office to residential conversions. That's another thing where you might see
even like that.
Yeah, some co-living, cohabiting, more affordable options in downtown markets. So we're seeing some office to residential conversions as well that will occur. So again, there's lots of opportunity in what's happening with commercial real estate. So that's what some of the operators are thinking about. But, Expansive as well as other co-working operators, we've never had the type of capital that WeWork had, right? We've never had SoftBank money invested in us. So we've had to be more fiscally responsible with our investors' money over the years. Again, not 100% of your portfolio is going to be perfect. So that's why there's going to be some closures, a handful maybe, versus hundreds, unfortunately, that WeWork is going through. But again, it's a lesson learned that you need to be fiscally responsible and look at the long-term plan, not just the short-term growth plan. I wrote some additional lessons down. I think Adam Newman used a bit more ambition beyond reason at some point, right? He scaled at all costs versus scaling at the right time.
Yeah.
So that's one lesson that I would say would be learned. They had a bit questionable culture and practices. You would see, maybe you watched We Crashed at one point. Yeah. Well, Adam was one that liked to spend and go on private jets and, host summer.
Yeah, private jet is questionable, definitely.
Yeah, big summer parties with A-list celebrities for WeWork employees, which again, it's not bad to get teams together.
Yeah, actually,
I'm not taking that away. Yeah. It was just the exorbitant cost of something like that.
Yeah, you made amount of money spent on it. But in general, I just wanted to say, and maybe I ask you later about that in general, this idea of having these events, at least when they had the first one, in summer, that looked pretty great. I mean, there was really when I was watching the movie, it was like the culture of happiness, they were like a big family having so much fun. But again, you have to be, you need to have some limits, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it all depends. Yeah.
What is sustainable? And so I think people will see through the hype eventually of a company. We saw it with, I'm not comparing this in any way to WeWork because it's not similar, but Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. And again, people will see through the hype eventually. And so you got to just stay on that path. And unfortunately they veered off it. So yeah, so that's kind of the lessons I've learned. But overall, if you were going to bet on a subset of commercial office space, flexible office space, co-working is definitely the one to watch. With the way the rest of office space is being looked at and evaluated these days, unpredictability, unpredictable times lead to needing more flexibility. And that's what we stand for.
Yeah. So talking about unpredictable times, I think after the pandemic and all things going on in the world, we're probably, I think we've seen it all. So we are ready. Yeah, you have to be flexible to succeed.
Yes.
And also, I guess, listening to you, I clearly realized that so much money is not always good, right? So a lot of investments sometimes lead to actually worse decisions, right? Yeah. And that you spend more than you need to, instead of being careful, with your money, right? With your expenses, with what you're doing. So this is really important. So summarizing everything that you've said, the industry is not dying, right? And even if we look, I think I've read like a great number of different articles that it's actually growing, right?
Yes.
And this is super sad that like at this point when the industry is going up, like one of the biggest co-working operators is actually going down, right? This is really, really sad to see, but I mean, life is life. But yeah. So we're talking about failures a lot.
Yeah.
But let's just be a little bit more positive. So if we're talking about this tremendous success of WeWork, right? So can we compare WeWork here maybe with, Starbucks, as, in regards to Starbucks was the pioneer of like Monday coffee shops.
Yeah.
So WeWork is like the pioneer of like flex workspaces. So what stays behind this tremendous success? Why are they so popular? Yes. And actually, before you start answering, just wanted to say hi to everyone. We see like a lot of comments here. Hey, Anna. Hey, Katerina. So we're really happy that you joined us. And all our other viewers. Yeah. So what stays behind this success?
Yes. So despite contrary to popular belief, I should say, WeWork did not originate the concept of co-working. It actually was a gentleman by the name of Brad Newberg out in San Francisco, software engineer back in 2005. And he created the first co-working space. A lot of similar ideas had been stirring for years. So bring it back to like 1990, Brussels. You might have heard of the company Regis or IWG. Yeah. They were actually founded well before WeWork and really focused on executive office suites. So again, community co-working wasn't really a thing at that point. It was more, you come in, you go to your office, but you still had shared amenities. Yeah. So that concept again was stirring, right? And then in 1995, there was the first hacker space in Berlin. So again, it was just a culmination. And finally, Brad Newberg out in San Francisco in 2005 coined the term co-working. And to answer your question, co-working is really built on community. And I think that's what WeWork did and does very well. They have a vibe, they have a captive audience, people like the buzz when they come into these spaces. It has a good energy. Yeah. And so that community of sharing ideas, innovation, meeting different companies of different sizes, that is what the life and breath of co-working really is. And that is only flourishing we've seen more people go out on their own during the pandemic. And so that, you're right, it's on the up and up right now for sure. So while those players dominate the global market, there's a lot of small operators coming up now, and they're expanding like 5 to 10 locations in a given region. I have a stat here. It was in 2012, I think there were 2,000 global co-working spaces. Now projected to be 40,000 global co-working spaces by next year.
Oh, wow.
So that shows you a trend. That shows you the trend, more emergence of side hustles. Again, more corporations wanting flexibility with these types of offices. So the trend is not slowing down. And you're right. I appreciate you bringing up how co-working was born, because it's an important part of what defines us as an industry.
Yeah. So like Adam's Newman idea was not brand new, right? He just found probably a better way of promoting it, right? But at a certain point, I think they even looked like a cult, because they were like all sharing the same philosophy. Yeah, like clearly. But yeah, that's really, really interesting. And so as far as they see, like we're based in Miami right now. Yeah, more and more co-working operators are opening. So we see them a lot. And my next question is actually, how is the situation different in different states? Are there states that have more of them? Others that have less? Why? So what contributes to this growth? So tell us a little bit more about the situation in the country.
Great question. Yes, this location trend of urban to suburban we're seeing happening across the United States. And we saw that during the pandemic, right? People don't need to be tied to a core office anymore, their headquarters. So guess what? They dispersed. They went towards family. They went towards a lower cost of living. I myself am a living, breathing example of moving from Chicago last year to South Florida, actually away from family, not because I wanted to, but because the lifestyle, a change of pace, better weather in the winter. And so again, you're seeing that shift of people moving around. We'll get into corporate mandates in a little bit and seeing if people are moving back to where they had to move from. But ultimately, it's about the future of living, Dasha. It is not about the future of work really anymore. It's about freedom. And so we're seeing a lot of that. Yeah.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. So it's not about future of work, but future of living.
Future of living. And China, India, for example, are gaining market share abroad, just for reference there. But, with more dispersed talent, you're seeing secondary, tertiary cities in the US become more popular spaces for co-working to grow. People value their time. They do not want to sit in traffic all day. So commute is a big reason why we're seeing more co-working spaces outside of the core center.
Yeah.
Even though when you are going to meet with your team, you likely might prefer a central location because people are coming from different areas. So again, urban co-working spaces will not disappear. You're just seeing more outside of the city center than you ever have before. Companies are looking to hire coders, customer support, contract workers in lower cost cities.
Yeah.
So they don't always have to look at coastal cities like San Francisco, LA, New York, Washington, DC for that talent anymore like they used to.
Yeah.
I was looking up some companies. Adobe is hiring in Utah, for example. So Salt Lake City is a popular area that we're seeing for co-working. Amazon obviously believes in expanded in Nashville. That's another area you're seeing a lot of growth. Salesforce is building their marketing cloud initiative in Indianapolis. Expansive, for example, we are not in downtown Austin. We are in North Austin, which has free on-site parking, which is appealing and is 100% occupied. And so it's crazy to see some of these centers that, again, are outside of downtown just thriving so much. So I also wanted to point out that we are seeing lower levels of occupancy, office occupancy in North America versus abroad. And a little bit of part of that is we tend to have longer commute times in the United States. There's less access to public transit. Miami, coming from Chicago, it's different. There's not as many transport lines. There's a larger average home size in North America too. So you find that people can work from home a bit more comfortably than if they're in Europe or other places where they have maybe a smaller footprint to live in. And then finally, there's a stronger representation of tech, of the tech sector in the United States, which ultimately means that, you know, these technology companies are more distributed. They want to hire from anywhere. They're more motivated to. So that's why we're seeing occupancy levels kind of level out around 30%, which I'll get to again shortly. But yeah, that's just a little bit about the location trends that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. So these are some of the emerging trends that we see after the pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to say that probably pandemic actually was good for co-working spaces.
Yeah.
Because people wanted to work from somewhere, right? And this like remote boom was happening. So right now the pandemic times are over, right? And we see this holy war going on, you know, on the internet between different tech companies. For example, where Elon Musk saying that remote work is morally wrong and like you have to go back to the office. And on the other hand, we have Brian Chesky, you know, the leader of Airbnb, who says, well, maybe we shouldn't be like, if not remote, but at least, you know, hybrid. So it's also an option. So we have these opposite opinions. So a question to you, like, are you an advocate of remote work or in-person one? And why do some companies want people back to the offices if there are so many advantages of working remotely?
Oh, I know, that's a loaded question.
Big one.
Employee choice, that's what people want.
Yeah.
So this transitions well into, I'll touch on the younger generation and what we're seeing there. So the Gen Z generation, they value flexibility like any of us, but they really do want social and networking opportunities. They want a little bit of differentiation from home life and work life. And I talked to a friend of mine who's a sales leader at a large technology company the other day. She hires young talent coming out of college. And she unfortunately has seen a lag in them developing skills, crucial skills, selling skills, communication skills, because they haven't met in the office as frequently. But again, this is not representative of all of Gen Z, let me tell you that.
Sure.
But there's just a few hires that she's made that they'll stumble on to Zoom and they'll be in their loungewear or pajamas. And so again, it's a real thing that we're dealing with, is kind of developing these skills, these necessary skills as a young worker. I mean, people coming to the Army as a young grad outside of college, like they got to be there. Has got to be some discipline and good training and onboarding involved with this younger generation that's coming into a new company. So that's a larger conversation. But I read a survey that by Accenture that 83% of workers prefer the hybrid model. 83%. So basically, a lot of people prefer that model. They want to balance life responsibilities, their home life, with the community of work. So they want that. There was a recent quote by someone I respect, Dr. Dror Poleg, and he said, "The office of the future is not a place. It's a network of locations." And so that means that you pick a place, where you're going to be more productive and happy that day, right? So it's a network of co-working sites, cafes, hotels, the office, the headquarters of the office. It's a blend of all of those. It's just not one singular place anymore.
So you mean I wake up today and I think, okay, I feel like working from home. I don't want to drive. Or, okay, I want to put my nice jacket and I want to head to the office and be there. So you mean it's like a choice of every day?
It is. I'm going to get into how companies are being more intentional when people are going to get together, right? But ultimately, that is something that employees want. And he's saying, hey, if you want to, there's companies that want to convert the design of their offices into more, let's say, restaurant, cafe style. He's saying, let them go to the restaurant for the day. Let them work from the cafe. Like, they can come to the office when they want to do the specific work at the office. but let them work from a restaurant for the day if that's what the type of atmosphere they want. Ultimately, leadership, mentorship opportunities, are so important in that office setting, but a lot of it's going to be team driven by the manager level. And you need a manager who's intentional, who's going to show up if he's telling people to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that kind of goes into now corporate mandates that we're seeing, right? So again, I talked about the utilization level of office occupancy plateauing around 30%, which is about half of pre-pandemic levels. I mean,
oh wow.
And that's pretty consistent now. They've gathered enough data to say that that's where office occupancy levels are landing. Yet companies like Apple, Amazon have tried to mandate 3 days a week in the office.
Yeah, it's getting more and more popular, like with this hybrid model.
Exactly. And so, but there's been significant pushback, right? So, there's concerns, of course, for them over information security, control, innovation that they obviously believe in that can be only done in person. A lot of those companies have the leverage to put these mandates in place because the talent will stay there at a company like Apple and Amazon. I talked to a real estate leader the other day at a company who has around 2,000 employees, a technology company. He's saying we cannot put this type of mandate in place because we will lose the employees to other companies. So there's other mid-sized technology companies who don't have the leverage like Apple, Amazon, to put this strict 3-day mandate in place. We see Goldman Sachs going to the extreme with 5 days a week, no questions asked. So again, do you want to lose that talent? Because, ultimately it's a hybrid model, but that hybrid model, even 3 days a week, ignores the option of giving those employees 100% remote work choice. And so it's such an interesting thing. I think, hybrid will ultimately move towards using the term distributed. So I think we're going to, again, see more companies be open to embracing more distributed work. But companies like Spotify, HubSpot, they've met in the middle and are implementing a hybrid and remote work model. So that gives the employees the choice of going into the office some or all of the time, or going remote some or all of the time. And that really has been working. And then they're intentional about bringing people together for quarterly events. We've seen our corporate event and meeting space demand skyrocket because you have companies, like the company Grammarly. They have a remote and hybrid work model, just like I was explaining. But 2 weeks of each quarter, they expect that their employees will fly out to a certain location and have cross-functional collaboration for 1 week and then team-level collaboration for 1 week. I don't know if employees need to be there for both weeks, but you're given that schedule so you can plan with your family ahead of time.
Yeah.
But it's putting you in that mode that you're going to be with those employees for that week, your team, and see other people, collaborate intentionally. So that's another great way that we're seeing hybrid remote work well, and then bringing in for those intentional meeting times together.
But this one is actually very interesting about the Grammarly example. But so a question for the company, is it still cheaper, right, to have employees all over the world, whatever, remotely, than to have like an office every day, right? So for them, it's easier to cover these travel expenses like once in a while than to pay for the office every day, right? So it's still better for the company.
I believe so, yes. I think there's, just a lot of companies that don't need as much space, but then they need to plan for when they do have these big get-togethers. So it's this push and pull of, do we leave what we have? Do we expand? Do we downsize? So that's something that I talk about, the concerns with real estate leaders every day and how we can help them kind of restructure their portfolio a bit to say, you don't need this much space. Use us for those ad hoc meetings, on-demand space. we can support those large groups as well. So yeah, that's where co-working again steps up to the plate to supplement these needs outside of those 2 weeks, right? What do those employees do outside of those 2 weeks when they come together on site? Well, that's where co-working sites can be a nice bridge for people. When they're not in the office, they can come to a space near their home and work. So we're seeing company stipends being able to give to employees as well, which is a nice perk. I also think we need to rebrand the office name to like studio or collab or, something that's just more appealing to the masses to get people together.
Trendier.
Yeah.
So something that like young generation would be like better with,
yeah,
right?
There's
Maybe.
just that stigma around the office right now. Return to office. Well,
So,
let's rephrase that a bit. I think we'll see more of that as well.
So it's important how you deliver the message, right? So you have to deliver the message in the right way.
Yes.
This is cool, but also just a little tiny question, because you mentioned that you talked to a company who make like hiring decisions, right?
Yeah.
And that they see that young generation, they're lacking some certain skills. Is that the reason why some companies want to have people back to the office? Because they want to have a better discipline and to control like certain skills to see the progress of the employees. Is that the reason? So can we link this?
I think that's a great point, Dasha, and something that has been a big question when I talk to so many leaders, people leaders, real estate leaders, of how am I measuring productivity?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be about productivity. It should be about the outcomes. And so let's not focus on the number of hours worked, right? It's not a standard 9 to 5 anymore. So I think we're going to shift from using how do we measure productivity? So how do we measure outcomes? And, I wish I could give you a straight answer of how the metrics to measure that. But again, we've been so focused on, again, productivity, hours worked, emails sent, revenue generated per employee. There's just a lot more to that. And again, outcomes over productivity is what needs to be focused on next. And so that doesn't mean that you're going to see your employees in the office every day. And that's not what's going to generate productivity ultimately.
Yeah, for sure. I agree here. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You can do nothing from the office and you can do like a talent from home.
Exactly. So I think you'll see, design trends. And that's why I love about co-working spaces is the variety of spaces they create, where you can go in your productive zone and then you can go outside in your collaboration zone. Again, there's different places for different types of work. But ultimately, outcomes over productivity is what we need to focus on, that conversation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And summarizing all these important points that you've mentioned. So probably a lot of people who are watching this podcast right now, this show, they are working from co-working spaces, right? It's really popular. So, and when you for example, evaluate a startup, you have a pitch deck where you can see, competitive advantages, where you can see, okay, this product is better or worse. So when we talk about the co-working spaces, are there any particular competitive advantages that we can see and make a decision whether I want to choose this one or that one? Because I myself, I've tried different co-working spaces, and I for sure I have, some things or perks, let's call them so, that I prefer, starting from nice coffee and ending with, some more advanced features as a number of meeting rooms or special tools, that you can use there. So what are these perks or benefits that you could, pay attention to, and what makes expensive difference? What benefits do you offer to your customers?
Yeah, that's a great way to round out the conversation. And again, why are co-working spaces appealing? So for me, what I look for are the basics. The essentials are so important. Even just, again, down to the basics of high-speed Wi-Fi, to a well-stocked kitchen, to cleanliness, right? That's going to ultimately get you in the right mindset when you come into a co-working space, is having those things dialed in. And so that needs to be on point. Secondly, variety of workspaces. What I like about Expansive being the owner is we have on-site storage, we have podcast rooms, we have corporate event space, outdoor space at this location specifically, a blend of phone booths to meeting rooms catering to smaller groups like 4 people to larger groups 20 or plus. Offices like we're seated in, but also team suites that have a private kitchen, conference rooms, huddle rooms, their own self-contained space. So for me, I look again, how am I going to do my best work? If it's all just open seating and there's no breakout spaces to take my calls and have that privacy, that's going to be a red flag. So look for a variety of workspace in that co-working space.
So basic things like
basics,
clean,
essentials,
like coffee, essentials, then variety of different workspaces. Okay.
And I would round out, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up community.
Of course.
Yeah, but it means different things to different people. For some people, they're extroverts. They want that communication, those events every day to tap into, right? And, that is important to some people and what they define as community. Others are, just sharing ideas, having that water cooler moment at the coffee machine, having the ability to do business with other companies. And then there's some people who really just don't want to have that loneliness at home. So they come in more just to have the buzz of other people around them, but they don't necessarily need to interact all the time. And that's okay. I get into those modes too, where I need to just retreat.
Yeah.
But knowing that I have other productive people around me that were in the same boat, kind of working
to get some inspiration.
It feels good. It feels good just not just being home alone in that box.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the 3 things that are so important to me and what I value about working at Expansive and the business model that we have. And again, I'm very optimistic about the future.
Yeah, so this is great. Definitely. I love everything that you've mentioned. So to make a conclusion, so the co-working industry is growing. So everything is good here, but no one is immune, as you said. So there is we can't say that some co-working operators are immune to that. No, obviously. And we should stay flexible, be ready to change our models, to experiments, right? So when we choose co-working for ourselves, we have to consider different facts, right? Some essentials, variety, community, and talking about Expansive specifically. So you have this great workspace with different workspace offers, right? So you have you can work from the shared desk, dedicated desk, whatever. You can rent the whole office itself. So if someone wants to learn more about Expansive, want to try for a day, just to feel it and have a general understanding, are there any options for the customers to come by and have a day pass or something like that? What's available right now?
Thank you for asking. I think when I first met you at an event, I said, hey, come in for a free trial day and a coffee. So of course, we want people not to have any pressure and to be able to try something different from a co-working space they might already be at, different from home. When they're traveling or on the road, pop by an Expansive location. It's expansive.com. And you can go to even expansive.com/locations if you'd like to find a specific location. We're, again, 46 in the United States. But yes, you can book a free trial day. So it's no strings attached. Get comfortable with it because you got to see yourself there. You got to have that feeling of this is where I want to be. 1 day a week, 5 days a week, it's up to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Kaylee. Yeah, but be careful, guys. You may really like it. So when you make this decision, think twice. Yeah, so thank you very much, Kaylee, for all this insight that you provided. I think that's really, it was a really great conversation. So I learned a lot, and I hope our audience learned a lot. And I'm really, I'm excited about the future of this remote work and of co-working. And I'm sure that like we should stay positive, and
Mhm.
you know, we have so many different things we had. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's only the beginning.
Yeah,
so.
definitely. Let's
Yes.
see what's going on. What will be in the future? Yeah. Thank
you,
you guys.
Tasha.
Thank you for being with us, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.